Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Louise Houghton.
Hello and thanks for tuning into the show today. We begin by taking a look at Berlin Fashion Week. There's been the talk of the town here this past week. First though, here's a look at what's in store for you over the next half an hour. Rays of sunshine, the daylight illusions of Norwegian designer Daniel Rybakken. Year-round, the North Sea island of Sylt is also popular in winter. And edible art. British artist Carl Warner cooks up whole landscapes from food. The 14th Fashion Week here in Berlin is now drawing to a close. Hundreds of thousands of people have flocked to the capital to see what will be on trend for the coming autumn-winter 2014-2015. Amongst the many runway shows was that of German-Polish designer Dawid Tomaszewski, who brings a touch of class to an otherwise hip and happening city.
Designer Dawid Tomaszewski has called his new collection Heavenly Bodies. Inspired by a book about sacred tombs, his 21 autumn-winter outfits are a celebration of the beauty of women. The German-Polish designer is showing his work at Berlin Fashion Week for the 8th time, and yet the novelty has not worn off.
I get to play a part in shaping the fashion scene here in Berlin and in Germany. It feels amazing to be part of it. I hope to have an important role in Germany's changing fashion landscape.
The designer founded his label in Berlin in 2009. And he's come a long way in the short intervening years. His was a circuitous route to Berlin. He studied fashion in Britain, art history in Poland, and worked for French labels Sonia Rykiel and Comme des Garçons in Tokyo. Then he came to Berlin to visit friends, but ended up staying on.
If you want to make fashion and do something fulfilling, you have to feel good. And I feel good here. Funnily enough, our biggest client base is in Berlin or in Germany. We sell more here than anywhere else. And that's why I'm here and now.
It did not take long for the Gdansk-born designer to find his niche, combining stylish cuts and fine fabrics. Tomaszewski describes his style as new couture and charges between 500 and several thousand euros for his designs.
Haute couture comes from Paris. As a craft, it dates back hundreds of years, but it doesn't really have a place in Germany. In the 1920s, Berlin had a booming textile industry, and that's why I have my main base here. I like the combination of great craft and small series of clothes, because we never make more than 1,000 of each garment. They are always limited editions, and couture exists only in Paris, so to some extent I've combined the two things.
Back at Fashion Week, Tomaszewski is marshalling his team for the show. The clock is ticking, and everyone is focused on getting things right.
At a fitting, you normally only see the girls individually. So when they're all lined up and everything's ready, then it all comes together all of a sudden. And when the girls are on the catwalk and I'm following the show on screen backstage, everything lifts from me. And the past is past, and I start to think about new things.
In the tent at the Brandenburg Gate, Tomaszewski's 12 models are busily getting ready. His work has already received several new talent awards, and he's part of a mentoring program run by German Vogue. His talent hasn't been lost on other fashion publications either.
Dawid stands out in Berlin because he goes for a luxury we don't have here. In Berlin, everyone wants to be cool and hip and in, but Dawid does his thing. He has a feeling for top quality and first-class materials, for the art of a fine cut and so on. Of all the designers here, he's the luxurious one.
We've always been taken very seriously, and I've always received praise. That makes me happy, because it removes the fear about whether what you are doing is right.
And judging by the applause, Dawid Tomaszewski again has done everything just right, this time as well.
In winter, daylight is in short supply in Scandinavia. Luckily, though, they have young, enthusiastic lighting designers like Norwegian-born Daniel Rybakken. He creates sunlight, well, illusions that make it seem as if there's sunlight, and he does this even in windowless rooms. Euromaxx visited the shooting star of the international design scene in Gothenburg to see how he makes his magic.
This is Daniel Rybakken in his studio in Gothenburg. Over the past 5 years, the 29-year-old has been winning one international award after another for his lamp designs. His work is shown in Milan, London and Paris. Unlike a lot of other designers, though, his main focus is on the effect lighting has.
The big problem is that they're not actually about light. You know, most lamps are, the press photos is taken with the light turned off. So it's just much more about the sculptural part of it than actually designing light.
Rybakken's great passion is daylight. He loves exploring how light behaves in nature and how that can be recreated. He can even make a windowless space look sunny, such as in this stairwell in Stockholm. He worked on the installation for 2 years using 6,500 LED lamps.
What you see here, these light patches, it's actually not the sun coming in, it's actually LEDs behind the wall to make the illusion as natural as possible and as real as possible. It's important for all of these details, like this edge here on the sides have to be a little bit more sharper than the top and bottom. They have to be more blurred, so it's a lot of testing to get this right.
Rybakken grew up in Norway. He was heavily influenced by the light in Scandinavia, where it's sunny almost around the clock in summer and there's very little daylight in winter.
I think a lot of people are very sensitive to light, and I think that's natural when you see how the weather is and how, you know, it's 3 o'clock and it's already starting to, you know, have the sunset already. And I think that the lack of light makes you really focus on the positive things with it.
The designer has been fascinated by this effect since his childhood. His bedroom at his parents' home in Oslo was his first research lab, so to speak.
When this small little room is lit with natural light, you just feel like you're part of something greater than the 4 walls of the room. You know, then you turn on the light, the room is transformed into almost like a prison.
Rybakken's natural light installations can only be seen in galleries or at design trade fairs. His lamps are now being mass-produced and sold for 400 to 800 euros. It sometimes takes several years for Rybakken to go from hatching an idea to completing a lamp. He uses computer programs and a 3D printer to develop prototypes he can test out. Despite their technical sophistication, his designs are always characterized by clarity and simplicity.
I just do the things that I would want for myself. And I think in that way I can create things that are very honest, instead of me trying to figure out what you would like.
By 4 in the afternoon, Daniel Rybakken no longer has any daylight for working, so the lighting designer will soon be heading home to his little daughter. Her name is Sol. Spanish for sun.
What an apt name to call his daughter. Now, the German North Sea island of Sylt is one of this country's most popular holiday resorts. 850,000 guests visit each year, including many celebrities who have summer homes there. Most vacationers naturally go in the summer, but the island still remains popular in winter, as we found out.
Sand dunes, sea and endless beaches. Welcome to Sylt. Thatched roof brick houses nestle into the dunes that rise and fall along the coastline. The island off Germany's North Sea coast is the perfect place for long walks. And for some holidaymakers, winter on Sylt is almost more enticing than summer.
The peace and quiet here means you can really relax and slow down. You can't do that at home.
At this time of year, it's nice to be able to go to a restaurant or for a walk without too many other people around.
Dress up warm outside, pop indoors to warm up, then continue walking.
Winter weather on Sylt is constantly changing. We've had days when it snowed, and then a quarter of an hour later we had sunshine and bright blue skies.
As an ideal place to warm up after a long stroll, look no further than the island's 6 beach saunas. At the Grande Plage, vacationers and locals alike sweat it out in temperatures of up to 90 degrees Celsius. The heat is so intense that they welcome a subsequent dip in the icy waters off the North Sea.
It's certainly refreshing when you just come out of the sauna. It feels good.
It's good for the skin, good for the soul, good for everything. When you come here after a hard day at work or early in the morning, you feel like brand new. It's brilliant, but it is freezing cold.
This year sees another first. Visitors to Sylt can now play curling or go ice skating in the dunes in front of the Sturmhaube restaurant in Kampen. This warming coffee and rum drink dates back to the 19th century. It's known as a Pharisee, and the big dollop of whipped cream on top served to hide the smell of alcohol from a conservative local pastor, according to legend.
The drink is not stirred, but it's drunk through the cream. In northern Friesland, if you stir it, then drink it, you're indirectly offering to buy a round.
The power of the sea has always been an inspiration to artists and is also manifest in the furniture created by Boris Janssen. He collects driftwood to make into interiors. The winter storms wash up a lot of raw material, each piece with its own unknown voyage behind it.
It's rare to find clean bits like this that have been in the water for a long time, but that's what I want. I don't know in advance what I'll do with them. I work that out when I get them home. I make things like lamps, beds, and garden fences.
Most of his designs are commissions. The works are as individual as the driftwood from which they are crafted. There's plenty of fish on local menus, and among the North Sea culinary specialties are the Sylt mussels, farmed off the southern tip of the island. They're especially meaty, and although there is a widely held belief that they should only be eaten in months with an R in their names, it is not true.
Die Muscheln sind am besten im Juli und im August und Sie merken, da ist kein R drin.
The mussels are best in July and August, and as you see, there is no R in those months. The R story dates back to when people didn't have the means to cool the mussels. If they were transported during the summer, they could go bad before reaching consumers inland. But with the cooling opportunities we have today, that is no longer an issue.
Heute bei den Kühlmöglichkeiten spielt das alles keine Rolle mehr.
So, like the mussels fished from its waters, Sylt can be enjoyed all year round. And in the winter months, you'll have the place more to yourself.
Now, here's a question for you. How many of you were told as children to stop playing with your food? Well, one British artist obviously didn't take too much notice of that piece of etiquette, and it's a good job too. In fact, the likes of advertising companies now actually commission him to do it, and he creates fascinating edible landscapes for them that will certainly make you look twice.
A coral reef made of broccoli, with exotic fruit for fish, and a fruit cocktail island. A picturesque valley with blue cheese cottages and hills made of bread. An asparagus Big Ben, a watermelon dome for St Paul's Cathedral, and a tower bridge made of runner beans, celery and breakfast cereal. Carl Warner began creating his edible landscapes 15 years ago. London offers both endless motifs and material.
Just as a very iconic city, as a city full of great landmarks, like the one behind me here, I draw a lot of inspiration from that because I've been to a lot of places around the world, but London is still my home, and it's a wonderfully creative city.
Within sight of the real Tower Bridge is Borough Market, a veritable food emporium and a favourite hangout of Carl Warner's.
My work is very much about a celebration of food, and so being amongst people who also have a passion for food and celebrate food in the same way, to me it's very inspirational.
He goes scouting at the market several times a month, in an ocean of ideas for new compositions.
I don't even know what these are, I've never seen these before, but this kind of looks like a little grub, so perhaps I could do a scene with insects made out of food, perhaps.
With a little imagination, all food has artistic potential.
If you look at the sort of lettuce leaf here, which is really amazing because it reminded me of like a splash, you know, like of a wave crashing on a rock. So I made this landscape. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But, you know, I think it looks really good. That's what you can do with lettuce.
Most of the material Carl Warner works with are foods that stay fresh even after hours of exposure during a photo shoot. But he does sometimes delve into the world of seafood too.
If you know the big kind of sculptures on Easter Island with the big faces that are all lined up, well, I've just seen these John Dory fish all lined up, and they kind of remind me of those big statues of the faces.
The foodscapes, as he calls them, are created at his studio in London. But before the modelling and endless rearranging, those scenes all begin with a sketch. This Far Eastern riverscape ends up incorporating cabbage-concocted water with tobacco for the boat's sails.
Making scenes out of food is quite a childish thing to do, but I quite enjoy that. That's kind of about keeping your imagination alive and doing something fun in life. A lot of people look at my work and they smile, and I really enjoy the fact that it makes people smile.
It can take several weeks between first draft and finished photo. Carl Warner is assisted by a team of modellers. They spend 2 days on the photo shoot. And as with all of Warner's foodscapes, remember, everything aboard and beside this chocolate express is edible. At first sight, you wouldn't know that this version of Venice's Rialto Bridge is made of pasta and crackers, or that this Great Wall of China has pineapple chunks for the brickwork. What started as a playful pastime became a profession. Some 70% of his works are made to order, for advertising agencies, for example.
They think, wow, that's weird, that's odd. And they look closely and then they realise that it's all made of food. So you need to stop people first of all, you need to grab their attention, and then you need to show them something clever.
The Liverpool-born artist has also branched out into landscapes formed from human bodies. Elbows reenact mountain peaks, while caves are formed from bent knees.
What I do is basically a form of illusion creating. I'm making something appear to be normal to people, but then when they look closely at it, they realise that it's actually made out of something else. So it is about deceiving somebody, but in a really nice way. I call it a pleasant deception. So that's what I am, a deceiver.
Those skills of deception are in big demand among art lovers and advertisers. Carl Warner always has fresh fare to offer.
Well, the theme of making art with unusual materials continues now in our final report of the day. But in contrast to the food landscapes, the artist in question now actually removes things from her frame to reveal her creation. With paper and a knife, German artist Annette Schroeter patiently cuts out tiny pieces of paper to create what is on one hand a stencil and on the other a fragile and fascinating picture.
Annette Schroeter carves her motif into the paper, creating elaborate images. Her works have to be planned in detail before she starts cutting. It's often impossible to correct any mistakes. This is how she makes incredible works of art out of paper, like those on show at the Anger Museum in Erfurt. This depiction of an industrial ruin spans several meters.
Silhouettes and cuttings both have something incredibly fascinating for me. There are things that are broken, but not necessarily bad or sinister. They also create a sense of cheer.
She takes inspiration from daily life. She's particularly drawn to patterns, but not everything is possible.
It's difficult to do shading with paper cutting, both in terms of technique and content, especially with the grey shades I use now and then. I either use grey paper or I try to create it by making very fine cuts, which create the illusion of a different colour.
Annette was a successful painter until she discovered her love of paper designs 12 years ago. She still teaches painting at an Academy of Visual Arts in Leipzig. But in her studio, she devotes herself to paper cutting. There are often hidden aspects to her work. These underpants resemble an animal's head. And these women are wearing costumes partly formed from brand logos. She's trying to challenge the things people identify with.
I discovered that if you use a logo multiple times, it becomes a pattern. That removes some of the logo's power. It's been trivialized, as it's been turned into a kind of wallpaper.
The roots of her technique lie in silhouettes, which were fashionable about 200 years ago. Everyone from Goethe to young girls tried their hands at making them.
A silhouette has a certain look. It's a look that strikes you as old-fashioned or of the 19th century, or at best, something that we all did in kindergarten. To do something like that in the fine arts today is brave.
Hochkultur könnte man auch sagen, zu tragen. Das ist mutig.
Annette goes against the stereotypes with great success. She's one of the few contemporary artists working with paper who've been able to establish themselves in the art market.
People shouldn't just look and see a paper cutting. They should ask themselves what's really there. That's what makes it work. The amount of effort it took isn't so important.
Thanks to Annette Schroeter's masterful technique and fresh ideas, her creations always deserve a second look.
Well, if you want a second look of that report, then you can find it online. The website is at the bottom of the screen for you now. That is all we have time for today, though, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.